Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. We're finally live on the air after a very long and somewhat frustrating day with technical difficulties. I blame them all on Google. But I am Paul Elam, and this is a Voice for Men interview with the director of the new documentary coming out in 2015 called The Red Pill. And it's directed by award-winning director Cassie Jaye. Will you say hello to everybody, Cassie?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be talking to you, Paul.
And likewise, I'm very excited about this interview, and I think a lot of people are going to get some good out of it in understanding the nature of your work and what's coming for increased awareness of the men's movement, pro or con. I want to let everybody know in advance that I am not here to debate with Cassie Jaye about men's rights issues. I am not here to make a point with her. There's going to be plenty of time for discussion and controversy over this film. If it's as good as I think it's going to be, it's going to cause a lot of controversy. It's a very controversial topic. But I want the time for argument to come down the road. I think this is a good opportunity to get to know Cassie Jaye a little bit, to get to know her work, and a lot more about the process that she went through making two other films and then this one, which she's in the middle of now. So if we can start with that, Cassie, can you just tell everybody a little bit about you, where you come from, your upbringing, that sort of thing?
Sure. Well, let's see. Where do I begin? I guess at the beginning. I grew up in Seattle, and I was a bit of a theater kid back in the day, and that eventually led into being interested in film acting. And went to Los Angeles at 18 years old, and by myself, not knowing anyone in town. And I started to try my hand at film acting and had a good 4 or 5 years doing that, and learned a lot and got a little tougher skin through that. And then the writer's strike of 2007, 2008, if you remember that, happened, and the town was just depressing. And everyone was growing beards and was depressed that there was no auditions or shows, new shows to go out on. And I had an unlimited subscription to Blockbuster back when it was still alive. And just started watching a ton of films in my apartment and fell in love with the genre of documentaries. And I think partly because I just love, I love true stories. Even if it's a scripted film, I prefer films that are based on true stories rather than sci-fi, fantasy, that kind of thing. Well, sci-fi, debatable if it's true. But so I fell in love with documentaries and really just knowing people's stories and experiences. And I guess I found making documentaries as a way to go on the journeys that I wanted to go on for just my own selfish reasons. And so my first documentary was called Daddy, I Do. And I started that when I was 21 years old, and filmed for a year with my family. I have a production company with my family called Jaye Productions, and I work with my mom, my sister, my uncle. I'll recruit other family members and friends too, and so for a year of filming with my mom, Daddy, I Do, then led into a year of post-production on that, and then we premiered in 2010 at the Idlewild Film Festival in Southern California, and won Best Documentary, and then went on to, we went to 10 film festivals and won 6 Best Documentary Awards. And so that was kind of our, good job, keep going to continue doing films.
Can you tell us a little about the subject matter of that film? What was that addressing, Daddy, I Do?
Well, so Daddy, I Do was looking at the debate between abstinence-only education, which says wait until marriage and not really much else except all the fears around contraceptives working or not, and all the consequences for unprotected sex or premarital sex. And so it looked at the debate between abstinence-only versus comprehensive sex education, which says you can wait until marriage if you want, but if you don't, here's how to protect yourself from unwanted pregnancy and STDs, and just the responsibility around your sexual choices. So it was really a big religious debate. I mean, that people's view on sex and how long you should wait and all that really comes down to your moral beliefs, and then how does that translate into the school? You know, a lot of people believe that their kids should wait until marriage or at least later in life, and they can opt their children out of comprehensive sex education, which they worry that if you tell kids about condoms and contraceptives, maybe it'll be more likely to for them to have premarital sex. So the film was really just the battle between the two, and from the filmmaking standpoint, we took a fly-on-the-wall perspective, which is just share people's different views and stories, and there was no narration, there was no you know, anyone telling you what to believe, what side you should come out of the film believing or being on. So I think because we took a fairly unbiased approach is why it got a lot of accolades, and now you can even view it in Yale's library and Stanford and a dozen other universities nationwide, and it's a good conversation starter because it shows both sides fairly.
Now I understand from speaking with you that earlier in life, I know that you had somewhat at least of a religious upbringing. Did you have opinions formed about this subject before you went into making the movie?
Absolutely. You know, I grew up in the abstinence-only programs. I was one of the purity pledgers as a teenager and wore a purity ring and said I'd wait until marriage and tried to recruit other kids to do the same. And it was very much a, because I was going to a Christian high school at the time, I was, it was trendy to be a part of that group. And so that's the world that I came from, but when I started the film, I was starting to question how I was raised and what I believed, and really look at the statistics and see if there's anything I could uncover that maybe kids shouldn't be taught abstinence only. So the beginning of filming Daddy, I Do, I knew the abstinence only standpoint. I knew the arguments for that. I was very sympathetic to their side because I know the world that those people come from. And I also knew their intentions. I do believe that most people are well intentions with you know, promoting abstinence only. But when you start to look at the statistics, then you do see that comprehensive for the nation as a whole, because we all come from different backgrounds and diversity. That comprehensive is better for a nation as a whole. And so the film definitely, you know, ends with that message. It doesn't ever put down either side, but you can just, I think, explore all sides to realize that there is something that's best for the nation.
I want to ask you a little bit more about this, doing a movie, which I think is a great idea, of sort of a fly-on-the-wall perspective of just putting the camera on a subject and letting the subject speak from a variety of viewpoints and allowing people to make up your mind. Is that a struggle for a filmmaker to do? Because I know we have people on one end like Michael Moore. Their movies are all their opinion, and it's very obvious, and it's really the exception for people to make documentary films that aren't trying or that don't have an agenda of one kind or another. So, and usually that shows pretty blatantly in those films. What gave you the idea that you were going to go into this and not show an opinion from the filmmaker's perspective?
Yeah. For Daddy, I Do.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, honestly, because I could see both sides, and so I didn't think it was fair to create a narrative, you know, a scripted film to support one side and not give the other side their best argument. And unfortunately, I think a lot of documentarians take that approach mainly because that is the anatomy for a more successful film or film, book, movement, whatever it is. A black and white approach does better than an unbiased, fair, look at all sides approach. Sadly, because, you know, black and white, it gets people riled up. It's a trigger. It, you know, makes them have a call to action at the end. So, you know, I just think of any documentary that's been successful recently. I think of The Cove, and, you know, if they interviewed, that was about the dolphins that were being slaughtered, and I think, you know, if they interviewed the men who were slaughtering the dolphins, you would probably see that they weren't, they were just trying to put food on their kids' table. And, there's all different ways that you could look at, they're not necessarily the evil either. There are sides to points on all sides. So, but, having a villain in the end of the Cove is much more interesting filmmaking.
Polarizing is what works in this world, in politics and movements and in everything. It's the polarities that, you're right, that get people motivated. Let's move on and talk for a couple minutes about your next film, which was also, and I was going to ask you this too, are you drawn naturally to controversial topics? Because as I look back through your films, it's almost like you just went right for whatever would be the most polarizing subject. Speaking of polarities, and the next one, which is about gay marriage, a documentary on that. Is there something about you that's drawn to the big questions that seem to divide our culture between ideas and beliefs?
Yes, and I think probably someone else would see that through line through my work, that it's always something controversial, rather than I'm just looking at what interests me and what challenges my beliefs and what makes me feel like I grow as a person. I do feel like if I were to make a film about something I know a lot about, can't even use an example right now, I don't know, cats, I love my cat. If I were to make a film about cats, that wouldn't interest me because it's not challenging me. It's just preaching that this is what I know and this is what you should know too. That's not really a journey I want to go on. I'd rather go on the exploration of understanding this world better and trying to leave it a little better when you move on. So with gay marriage in my next film called The Right to Love, An American Family, it premiered in 2012, and because I grew up very religious and sheltered as a kid, I didn't know any gay couples that were out when I started making The Right to Love, or just gay people in general, not even couples, but even within my own family and friend circle, I didn't know any gay people. And then, of course, I started making the film, and a couple started trickling out and saying, oh, well, I am gay or lesbian, and I had no idea, but they didn't. I mean, that just goes to show how, the fear of coming out, that people won't accept you, so I didn't even know my own friends or family members were. But the Right to Love was just looking at this one gay couple in Santa Rosa, California, who had 2 adopted kids, and they just had so many things about their life story that, it pulled so many heartstrings that I think they were, they could touch people in so many different ways, whether it's seeing that their kids, one who has a lot of medical issues, straight family or even straight single person wanted to adopt him, and his sister, they wanted the adoption house wanted to keep him and his sister together, and so the couple we follow were willing to take that challenge, and they're just the most loving couple and family I've ever seen. And also one of the dads is a Gulf War veteran and a SFPD, and just so many things about their story you really connect with.
And what was that process like for you, going from somebody from a sheltered background who really, at least at the time you went into it, it apparently was like that you didn't even really know anybody that was gay, well, that you knew about, to getting into the middle of one of the most hotly debated ideas of modern times regarding sexuality. What was the process for you like from where you started the film and where you ended up at the end?
Well, luckily, in some ways, I think it's great to make a film that you don't know a lot about to begin with, because then you address those areas where, say, the mass public may also not know a lot to begin with, and so you're asking those kind of innocent questions in the beginning, rather than someone maybe who is gay making a film about gay marriage. They've already jumped to a level of acceptance and understanding of the gay community that they may miss the mark on reaching the heterosexual community. So there was a huge I think, transformation that happened for myself, my sister, my mom, and the other people who were involved in the making of The Right to Love, where we started off very innocently, just asking questions that we had no idea about, and then now we feel like we know a pretty good basis of all the LGBT issues that are out there, and what the fight is like for them.
Do you feel like it changed you fundamentally as a person?
Yes, I think the biggest change I had from making The Right to Love was realizing that if you're silent about a minority group being discriminated against, then you're part of the problem. And I always kind of had this, I would vote for gay rights in the ballot box and before making The Right to Love, and so I was supportive in that way, but I was never vocal about it. I never brought it up in conversation if I knew it was going to turn into a conflict or a confrontation with someone. I just felt like I wasn't armed with enough knowledge to have that debate with someone, and so I was silently supportive of gay rights, but I didn't feel like I had a place to talk about it. So after making The Right to Love, now I realize that a minority group obviously needs the majority support to make any progress, and so if you're not standing up, then you're part of the problem.
Let me ask you something, I think from a sort of a men's rights perspective about this subject, and just to get your reaction to it. What do you say to somebody, for instance, I don't have any problem at all if gay people want to marry. I don't think anybody should stand in their way at all, and I've always believed that. On the other hand, I see a family court system and that is corrupt. There are problems endemic to that. What do you say to those of us that are saying, hey, there's a problem to begin with the legal aspect of marriage, and that what we're simply doing right now is inviting men and women who happen to be gay into a system that will eventually destroy a whole lot of their lives. And because that's what we believe is happening in family courts now to a lot of people. It isn't that I fully believe everybody should have the same constitutional rights and fundamental freedoms, and I wouldn't dream of standing in anybody's way. But personally, I would have an issue with the idea of supporting what marriage has become in this culture and not talking about that. What do you say to somebody like that that has those concerns?
That's a great question to bring up. In all honesty, I don't think I've thought about it like that before. So, I mean, my gut reaction, and this could be wrong, maybe next month I'm going to think, why was I thinking like that? But this is just my gut reaction. I'd say that each person has a responsibility to pick a partner that they truthfully believe will be true to them and will respect each other, and even if it ever gets to the point of separating, which obviously every puppy love married couple never looks at it like that, but if it does get to that point, you'd hope that you at least had common courtesy and you connected your souls in some way to want to make sure that person moves on the best way possible after the situation. And I think gosh, that's a hard one because some people are
I know it's a tough
victims,
question. There's no really great answer to that. It's just more hypothetical than anything. I mean, I'm of the mind that marriage, bad or good, if we have it, then everybody ought to be allowed in the foxhole with us, and we take our punches as we go. I don't know if I'm so hopeful about the idea of hoping for somebody to not be vindictive in court, because, as they say, the person you marry is not the same person you divorce. Anyway, I just wanted to get your take on that, because that's one of those bleed over areas that we have a lot of discussions about in what I do. And I want to move on now to what a lot of people have been wanting to hear about, which is the movie The Red Pill, which is going to be coming out in, or is it early 2015 that you expect to release?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be the goal, but you can never know with these things.
Right.
I'm hoping just 2015 in general. So.
Speaking of controversial topics, right now, and I think well into the future, the men's rights movement makes politics and religion look like a walk in the park in terms of polarizing people and making them heated. I've never seen a subject create so much hostility on both sides of the fence as this one, once you get people engaged. Now, of course, right now there's still a lot of people that never heard of the men's movement. We are seeing that change in a lot of ways and expect it to change more in the future. But let's go with this like we did with the first two movies. What gave you the idea? Tell us how a young feminist with a religious background and going through several different, I think, philosophical changes in life, sat down after winning the Cannes Film Festival and being recognized as a great filmmaker, decided to take on, of all things, the men's rights movement as a subject for a documentary.
Well, first I'm going to agree with you that this is the most heated, polarizing debate of a film that I've ever made before, and yeah, I mean, people were warning me when I made The Right to Love that I was going to get backlash or, hate mail from Westboro Baptist Church or wherever, and we did, but it was never to the extent that I'm beginning to see with The Red Pill between feminism and the men's rights movement and all the shades in between. And yeah, it's going to be quite a ride the next few years. So I'm excited to take it on, but also realize it's a lot of people have a lot of skin in the game and also just very passionate about what they believe in, and rightfully so, with many personal experiences to validate that passion. So how your question was, how did I think to make this film?
Tell us, how did you arrive at the decision? How did you wake up one day and say, I'm going to make a movie about the men's movement?
Well, I was literally in kind of just a very introverted state where I was trying to look for my next big project, my next feature film. I've made a couple shorts in between and did some scripted films and commercials and things, but I wanted to look for my next big feature film project. And anytime it's a feature film, it can take years to complete. I mean, I have documentary filmmaker friends who are on their 9th year of making a film, which to me it's just get it out while you still have the energy. But this will probably take up a good 3 years of my life, and so I wanted it to really be something that challenges me and that I want to learn more about, because if I don't want to learn more about it, I'm not going to have the fire to complete it. So it was in spring of 2013, and I was looking at a whole array of different issues to tackle for my next project. I mean, I was looking at the legalization of prostitution as a documentary. I was looking at rape culture was one that I was really toying with, mainly because it was a term that was flying around in mass media in early 2013 around the Steubenville case. And so my newsfeed was just blowing up with rape culture, and so I was looking into it and saw that a lot of people were very passionate about it, and I was curious about it. So I started Googling it, and of course the majority of articles that popped up were Jezebel and Feministing and all the feminist sites out there, and also some, Fox and MSNBC and the main media sources. But when I scrolled down, I found avoiceformen.com, and I clicked on The Unspoken Side of Rape, one of your blogs that you wrote. And so I read that, and it fascinated me, mainly because, and I'm not going to lie here, I mean, that really took me aback, because here I am, I've been calling myself a feminist for almost a decade. I mean, my adult life, and I had rape culture. What I had heard was about victim blaming and questioning what was she wearing and why was she walking outside at night by herself, and so that's what I understood rape culture to be, was questioning the victim. And so when I read your blog, I thought, oh, well, this is the rape culture that I've been hearing about, Mr. Paul Elam. He's the perpetrator. So that was my instant gut reaction. And so I started reading more blogs on A Voice for Men and found it fascinating. I'd never heard these points of views ever before. And I actually put it aside for, I read your blog for about a week, a ton of articles, and then I put it aside and was looking at other documentaries to make. And then I came back to it, and I was talking to my mom a lot because she's my producing partner. And I just kept on coming back to A Voice for Men and saying, I want to know more about them. And I don't know what it is. They kind of scare me. They're intimidating. I didn't know what I was going to find or uncover upon talking to you or meeting the other MRAs. And so I just took a leap of faith and said, I just want to know more. And I realized that this is really going to challenge myself because I've only known the feminist side up until that point. And I actually previously with Daddy I Do, I did do a little bit of filming of myself thinking that I was going to have some kind of transformation that I wanted to capture during Daddy I Do. And then I ended up not being consistent enough with filming myself to include myself in Daddy I Do. And so I just said, take me out, let's just make it the people we interview. And then when we were making The Right to Love, we also had a very transformative experience. And so when we do Q&As talking about The Right to Love and said where we were coming from as, growing up very religious and never knowing any gay people, people in the audience would say, your story should have been in the film. And we're like, yeah, I mean, sometimes the making of the documentary is more interesting than the documentary itself. And so I realized that, I'm probably going to have a lot of internal struggle or questioning of what I believe in. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to document my process. So right from the beginning of deciding to make a film about the men's movement, I started doing what I call video diaries. And it's just me by myself in a room with the camera and just talking about my thoughts, feelings, concerns, questioning everything. And logged a lot of hours with that because it's mainly and I don't know what to believe. But I'm really glad that I've been consistent with that because now looking back, we've almost been filming for about 10 months now. So hoping to wrap filming in June at the Detroit conference. So, I've been consistent with filming my video diaries to the point of you can see the wheels turning and starting to change. And I mean, there's even early video diaries that I did where I don't believe what I said back then, but it's interesting to see how that way of being brought up and thinking for so long could affect how I processed interviewing MRAs and see that change.
I don't want to ask you to give up any spoilers for this, but can you tell us a little bit more now? Obviously, when you came in and read that first article, I remember that article too. There's some things that are written on avoicefromming.com that are solely there to provoke people to click on something else, and they work pretty well, but I recognize they are shocking to most people. But there's also a lot of other material, and so in reading a lot, I'm sure you were exposed to perspectives, and well-articulated ones, on a position in life that is different than what you had been used to. How was that impact on you? What was that like for you to come in never having heard of this stuff, and all of a sudden you're hearing a whole realm of counter theory that's basically deconstructing everything that you've come to believe? Or most of what you've come to believe.
Right. It's a frightening process, but it's also a process I'm no stranger to because I've gone through that with my religious beliefs, with my views on gay marriage, with abstinence-only education. So I've had that kind of coming out and seeing the light experience before. But this one, particularly seeing men's issues in a new light, is it was very overwhelming for me, especially in the beginning, because you start to question everything, and actually why the title is The Red Pill, because I felt like that symbolism was the closest to what the process has been like for me. And it affects your everyday life. I mean, no matter what show I'm watching or radio station I'm listening to or seeing people on the street, now everything, I see everything differently in terms of gender roles. And you know, before making The Red Pill, I never thought about what would it be like to be a man in today's society. Never crossed my mind. I always thought just women have a mountain to climb and to get up to the equality that men already have, and I just always assumed we're the ones that have the difficulties, that are discriminated against. And so to now look at you know, all the men that I love in my life, my father figures and my boyfriends and guy friends, I mean, I look at their roles so differently, and now to a point of saying, you know, roles reversed, would I wanted to be born a man? And the scary thing to answer. So, I mean, obviously, you probably already hear the answer, but let's say that for the film. So, I mean, but it is interesting to see how, I mean, whether I'm looking at the construction workers on the side of the road while I'm driving to work, and just even the housekeeping. I mean, it's so silly now that I think about it, but I tried to remember why was I such a I don't know, militant feminist before, and I was like, well, what was stirring that up in me? And mainly it was two reasons. One was I was upset with my role in society, and the second reason was I was upset with the way that women were portrayed in movies. And, you know, because I had a background in being in the film industry and acting, I was very aware of how, you know, the only roles that I would go out for were the blonde girl dying in the woods with her shirt torn off. And so, you know, I was very aware of, like, oh, this is my role, this sucks. But I never thought, what is it like for men? And, I mean, we've interviewed probably around over 30 men's rights people in this film so far, and each person has their own personal story as to what brought them to the movement. Some people actually were just strictly compassionate about friends that they saw or a family member and didn't have anything personally affect them, but more indirectly saw discrimination. And that's probably why you see a lot of women coming to the men's movement out of compassion. But
did you find
yeah,
the fact that there were women in the men's movement strange at first?
I did, and you know, I did. I'm thinking about how when I'm talking to people about making this film, The Red Pill, it's really fascinating to see the responses, and a majority of them are dismissive of the men's movement. Many of them are even attacking me for making such a film. And I actually had one person in particular tell me, "Why are you giving them a platform to speak?" So I've been really
cool to hear that.
Well, I mean, really, it's just seeing what you guys have been dealing with. I mean, seeing what the men's rights activists have been dealing with is this dismissiveness and put down and not really understanding the issues. I think the blanket statement of men's rights advocate or activist is a scarier thing to people rather than looking at the issues one by one. And that's what I want the film to focus on, because I think as a blanket statement, would you be for men's rights and the men's rights movement, people immediately say no, or heard that it was a hate group or something. But when you start to talk about the issue one by one, you see it start to chisel away in them. You see, oh, well, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think about that. And so, I mean, I've been having conversations with my feminist friends about this film, and it's amazing to see the gut reaction disgust for such a topic. And I'm hoping that a documentary film, hopefully you have an audience that's barricaded in the theater for 90 minutes and will at least sit and listen to the different stories, the different issues, and maybe, I mean, I don't expect to, have people walking out in droves now joining the movement or anything, or on either side, but at least start the conversation and raise a little bit of awareness about what the men's movement's about. But, yeah.
So, in the process of making this, you certainly sounds like that you have been alerted at least to some issues that maybe you hadn't considered before. And by the way, for what it's worth, the same thing happens with men. I remember 25 years ago driving to work, and I was thinking at the time about what we needed to do at the treatment center I worked at to create a women's program. And some beggar came up to my car asking for money, and I was like, get away from me. And that was the mentality that I had. I think that's a human trait, so it's a real common thing. But back to the movie, when you were making this, did you expect to hear people like Warren Farrell and Aaron Pitsey and some of these people say a lot of the stuff? Was this just like one bowling ball after another hitting you? or what was that process like, hearing these intellectuals that have been around now for a long time, and suddenly you know who they are?
Yeah. And I can't quite explain why this is the way it was, but this was just my experience. I really felt like meeting the people behind the words, behind the books, behind the blog posts had such a greater effect on me understanding where they're coming from and seeing their side, rather than just reading what they had to say. Even watching videos. I watched videos of Warren Farrell on YouTube before I interviewed him, and was reading Myth of Male Power, and some of it was sinking in, but a lot of it I still had a huge wall up. And then I met him, and I've interviewed him a few times and filmed him, and gosh, I must have like over 10 hours of footage just with Warren Farrell. So it's a lot to take in. But when you meet him and see where his heart is, see where his intentions are, I can ask the questions that I'm thinking while I'm reading The Myth of Male Power and get that immediate response. It just has such a bigger effect on understanding where they're coming from. Same with Erin Pizzi. I didn't know what to think before meeting her, and she just blew me away. One of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my life. Absolutely, hands down. Mark Angelucci, Dean, of course. I mean, there's so many great personalities, people, stories, and particularly seeing where their heart was made me see, and I'm not sure why, reading the blogs and watching the YouTube videos just when it hit it. I mean, maybe I can't tell you why, and I hope, in the documentary people will be able to connect with people on screen as well and not feel a wall up. But I think when you're just so entrenched in an ideology to begin with, it's very hard to see outside of that, frame of mind. No matter what it is, if it's a religion, if it's whatever.
Agreed. You also, on that point, interviewed a number of feminists for this movie, Michael Kimmel among others, which, as you should have done, everybody needs a chance to compare ideas. Was there anything new in that for you, in that experience, in talking to people that have invested a huge amount of skin in this in terms of ideology? What was it like talking to Michael Kimmel and others and their reactions to the men's movement?
I mean, it was, well, I was going to say it's a very eloquent way of dismissing. I mean, there will be some people I interview on the streets about the men's movement, and they're just, oh, that's ridiculous. Then you talk to Michael Kimmel, and he'll be like, well, that's ridiculous, and this is why. So, it's a more a deeper way of dismissing the men's movement. And you know, he's a very smart man. He's I think a great man. I mean, as far as personality, there people I will interview is like, yeah, we could be friends. We may not see politically eye to eye, but you know. And so he's a good man, and I think, you know, the reason I didn't start interviewing feminists until I had already been filming the men's rights people for about like 6 months or so, and then I wasn't immediately thinking, oh, I'm going to interview a bunch of feminists, but I actually found myself in a place where I don't know if I can keep playing devil's advocate. I forgot the feminist points. Because when I was interviewing you or Warren or Aaron, whoever, I wanted to play devil's advocate and I wanted to ask the hard-hitting questions. And then I hit a wall and I started thinking, well, what were my reservations to begin with? And so then that's when I started reaching out to feminists. And you know, I really can't say much now. I mean, you'll see in the film that there's a lot of back and forth and
oh, yeah. And we don't want you to give it away, but I know that the interview process is one that sometimes changes the interviewer more than it does the subject. I thought you did an excellent job of interviewing people from my experience with you, but I did wonder how all this, the feminist ideas coming in, how all this sort of mixes together and how it appeared to all of you looking at you got to talk to all these people. You are one person that has probably talked, not probably, has definitely talked to more men's advocates than anybody. And you've talked to some of the leading feminists out there. You've had a bird's eye view up close and personal from all these people. And do you think you were able to capture that in the film? Do you think you got what, over 100 hours of footage now?
yeah.
Again, I've told you this before. I don't know how you're going to condense this down to an hour and a half. I was with you and Warren Farrell, and he talked for 30 minutes at one point without stopping, and I would include all of it. So I would be hopeless as an editor. But this is really the emerging argument of our times right now, because there is a men's movement. It's really happening. There's a lot of people that don't like it. For instance, we saw recently on Saturday Night Live the little skit about the men's rights advocate. I personally, I didn't think it was funny. I wasn't offended. I thought it was kind of silly, but there's also seemed to me something calculated behind it, in that the representation of MRAs as people who can't get women, who can't keep, you know, this guy was apparently shopping a mail-order bride, and no real woman would want to be with a guy that was interested in men's rights, and of course misrepresenting the issues that we wanted to shut down Planned Parenthood and things like that, which, you know, there's only like one article on A Voice for Men about abortion, and it's basically we don't have an opinion, not an official one. But at any rate, what was your reaction? I know you saw that. How did you feel about that skit?
Well, you know, that skit on SNL has been said to be one of the most unfunny skits they've ever done. And if you talk to any comedian, they'll say, when things are funny, it's because it's true. And I mean, that SNL skit, there was no truth to what that MRA, you know, character was saying he was about. And it was just really upsetting to see that, but also for me it was like, okay, this is what I'm up against. There's a lot of misinformation and about the movement, and this is what you guys are dealing with, is just people just flat out not understanding what the issues are or what you're about.
I'm wondering what this is like for you too, because one thing that just has to be considered is that you're right, even doing a movie talking about the men's movement, some on the extreme ends of feminist ideology are going to hate you for even doing the movie, and there's men's rights activists on the other end that if you don't cross every T perfectly to their satisfaction and dot every I exactly like they would like it seen, they go ballistic. So you're not only caught in one of the most controversial issues of the time and one of the most polarizing, but you do have elements in both camps that are just like, no matter what you do, it's going to be wrong. That must feel like an incredible amount of pressure sometimes.
Oh my gosh, yes. It is, and one thing that, I don't know, stood out to me was I was hearing some of the men's rights comments about the Mary Lou Henner, interview that I did show, and I will be, dissected for how I word certain things or how I label something, and for me, I'm not looking to preach to either choir, and I think the men's rights people have the tendency to want to make sure that all of the lingo is lined up. I mean, everyone knows our language and how to say certain things and how to present it and approach it. And I've been looking at the men's rights movement for only 10 months, maybe a little more, and I'm not well versed in all of your issues, but at the same time, I'm trying to reach people who don't know anything about the men's rights movement. So I think in some ways that I don't know, newness for me to be coming to the movement will help audiences also comprehend, rather than having someone who's been doing this for decades, try to reach newbies. But let's see. So yeah, feminists are going to attack me on one side, MRAs are going to attack me on another side, and everyone in the middle. My goal and remedy for this issue is to just strictly share the stories on both sides, on all sides, in between as well, and you as an audience can make your own choice, and that's why one of the poster's little tagline is called "You Choose," the red pill. So if the blue pill is the feminist world we live in, and the red pill is the the men's issues. You choose what world you want to live in, and we're just going to show you both worlds and show you different perspectives. I never would have I don't think I would have ever looked at the men's movement unless I was a documentary filmmaker and wanted to try something new, look at a new world. And I'm hoping, there's probably a lot of people who would never themselves Google search rape culture or somehow come across a voice for men and start reading your articles. So hopefully the film will be that little, introduction into something they know nothing about. But yeah, like I said, just share the different stories. You're going to meet everyone from the heavy hitters on the feminist side to the leaders on the men's rights side and hear their arguments. And you may want to throw tomatoes at the screen, or you may want to jump up and say, hooray, but either way, we're going to show both talking points. And hopefully have a conversation after.
For what it's worth, that effort has my endorsement. I think it's great. I never expected, just so the men's audience that watches this interview and that reads the website, I never expected that it was anybody's job to come in and tell our story for us. I was really happy, and I still am, that somebody came and allowed us to speak and recorded it, and I don't care if it's up against other people's ideas. I'm glad that both sides of the story are being presented, and I'm respectful of filmmakers that take that fly on the wall approach and just put a camera on something and allow people to decide. I don't have any need for a crutch, and I've seen some of that, and that's it's a part of all movements. There's some people out there, you're never going to please them. I still get emails all the time from people that I said this or that in an article 3 years ago. Why did you say that? That sounds feminist. You're always going to have that crowd. Is there anything about the movie, the process, anything at all about this whole experience for you that you might want to talk about that I haven't asked about?
The only thing that comes to mind is that I just want to reiterate, I talked a little bit in the beginning about how I was doing these video diaries while filming. And so that will be a part of the film, a small part, but kind of the through line to take the audience on this journey with me, questioning everything that I've just thought to believe before making this film. So I hope, maybe in some ways, that my own transformation will also help movements, any movement out there, see how you start to crack that egg. And, you know, I mean, when someone's starting to look at something for the first time and really question their, you know, the way they were brought up or their ideology, it's a very scary thing for them to do, and you don't want to necessarily come at them with a bulldozer. But at the same time, you know, sometimes a bulldozer is what's what, you know, gives you the door to walk through in the first place. But, you know, I think it's, I hope it'll be helpful that I made myself the guinea pig in this experiment to show the process of seeing all sides and in this gender war.
I can't imagine anything being hurtful about allowing people to speak their minds and speak their hearts and allowing people to listen. Hopefully that, you know, that was the birth of a lot of social movements, and they've all had their times of controversy. I remember I grew up in the generation of feminists being called women's livers, and they were harshly criticized by society around them for wanting different things in life other than one role. That was a transformation that I think our society needed, but it wasn't without its hostility. It wasn't without them being dismissed at first. Yeah, and I know that upset some MRAs to hear me say that. It doesn't matter. The truth is the truth, and we're a changing, evolving world, and hopefully for the better. In a moment, we're going to be going into another discussion with Dean Esme. I just wanted to thank you, Cassie, for doing this interview and for making this movie. Whatever it turns out to be, hopefully a lot of people will get exposed to some ideas that they might not have considered before. And then if they reject them, then they had a chance to look at it all and reject it. And then we accept that and move on. But thank you very much. And Dean, you can come rescue us now. And we'll say goodbye to Cassie Jaye. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and looking forward to what the year or two brings.
Buy the movie.
Yeah, and we'll be, just a little plug here for a second, we'll be releasing a trailer sometime this year. Obviously, it's hard to do that right now since we're still developing the film and don't know how to wrap that up into a nice, 30-second.
That was the question I forgot to ask. When will we see a teaser, do you think?
Well, definitely this year. It's just a matter of figuring out the packaging for the film, because we're still figuring out the film. I mean, for a documentary, the story is really written in the editing room, and we're only beginning to start that process. So once we have a better idea of how the film's going to round out, then we can make a trailer to represent that. But definitely, this year sometime, and we'll be releasing updates on the redfilmmovie.com, as well as our Facebook page, the Red Film Movie. Yeah, I'll see you in Detroit.
We'll see you in Detroit.
Okay,
Dean, come save us. We had just to let everybody know, and Dean, you can go to work now on doing the transition, but we had issues today, and there was all kinds of problems getting connected, so we ended up doing this on Dean's channel. I'm sure we had a number of people frustrated with trying to watch it, but now we're back with Dean. I think we are. Dean, are you there?
I believe I am. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay. Let me figure out what's up with that.
Okay. Anyway, I'll just ramble some more while you're figuring out what's up with that. First of all, we weren't going to do this additional hangout to do an analysis of the interview, but I did want to ask you briefly if you had any thoughts watching it, or were you able to watch it?
I was able to watch it just fine, and I see myself on camera. I don't know if anybody else can. Oh my God.
Ah, now we see you. Okay.
Yeah, he needs to wash his hair. I really enjoyed watching that. I was fascinated because I had watched Daddy I Do before ever talking to Cassie, and I was impressed with how she managed to get through an extremely emotional issue for some people and not inject her personal opinions into it at all, and not even slant it one way or the other, although I came away very firmly of the conclusion that the abstinence-only movement probably doesn't work. It was pretty clear to me she wasn't trying to spin me to come to that conclusion. And
that was just the facts speaking to you, or at least as you
was just the facts speaking to me. And the people, and the fact of the matter is, I actually walked away liking the abstinence-only people a little more, because I had spent many years that, regardless of my religious and whatever beliefs are, these people were advising something really stupid for reason. I could go into a whole long list of reasons why, but the bottom line is I thought they were just dumb. But they came across as very human and very likable. And so, or virtually every single abstinence-only person came across well in that film. I didn't think anybody came across badly in her film, which I think is a remarkable achievement for a documentarian.
It's pretty tough. I don't think I could or probably would do it. I'm probably too biased in my point of view to be a decent documentarian.
Well, plus you're just a bad, evil man in general, so.
As well, yeah. There's always that. I mean, we don't even need to say it. Here's what I'm thinking. You know, the reason that I wanted to do this discussion with you after the interview with Cassie was because I observed a lot of things, and it's nothing new. But in particular, leading up to when I made the announcement about this movie, and when I saw comments on it on Facebook, on our site, and on other places, we have a contingent in the men's community that is sort of, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but it's sort of like, watch out, the sky's going to fall in contingent. Somebody might say bad things about you. And I wanted to have a discussion for a few minutes, a little bit on the nature of social movements, of how they happen, and the fact that this is a part of the process, that we're, you know, it's not like that with American civil rights that a bunch of African Americans got together and said, hey, our rights are being violated, and then all of a sudden white America said, oh yeah, okay, but boy, that's really true, well, so let's just fix it up. The idea that any social movement has ever made progress without there being conflict, without there being condemnation. There were other black people that were just outraged at the beginnings of the civil rights movement and who wanted nothing to do with it. It was the same thing with feminism, the same thing with gay rights, the same thing with any kind of movement I can think of. There's always an initial reaction from society to condemn it, to put it down, to make fun of the people that participate. First they ignore you, then they make fun of you, then they fight you, and then you win. And we are reaching the fighting stage of this battle, and of course we get mostly negative press. That's why we need to have a movement. It's because of these entrenched ideas. So I just wanted to talk a little bit and get your ideas too about what do we do with this contingent in the men's movement that somehow thinks that our success is measured on getting people to say things nice about us and getting people to write good things and to make good movies that speaks our point of view. And I'm saying this about a lot of people that I respect. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but it seems to me a sort of not looking at history the way all social movements have developed and taken that into account when analyzing what's going on now.
Some people get immediately angry when you start comparing to any other civil rights movement, which is a little frustrating because it's like, well, they're saying, if you make a comparison, for example, to black civil rights, they'll say, well, what you're saying, you have it as bad as people with segregated lunch counters. They want to go there. If you mention Jews in Germany, oh, you're saying that you're just as bad off as that. If you mention almost any other movement, people seem to think we're saying, well, it's exactly the same for us. And, well, no, it's not, because if you look at any of those social movements, none of those were exactly identical either. All you're doing is drawing parallels. And when looked at from that context, I actually think what may be the most relevant movement to compare us to, if anything, is the gay rights movement. Maybe just because it's more modern, but it is more contentious. It does homosexuality hits buttons in people in ways that others don't. And so let's look at the gay rights movement. The epochal moment of that is generally agreed to be something called Stonewall, where a bunch of gay men, and by the way, mostly men, almost entirely men, got tired of police raids coming into gay bars and arresting everybody for being gay, and pretty much rioted over the thing. And then so there was Stonewall, and then, as everybody knows, gay rights just broke out everywhere, and it was all over, right? No, it didn't. Apartheid in South Africa. Is our situation as bad? No, that's not the point. The point is apartheid in South Africa. Was the movement to end apartheid? How did it go? 40 years of apartheid, then Nelson Mandela walks out of prison, and it's over. Is that how that went? No. It's how it looks like in the history books. Even if you look at something really big like the fall of the Soviet Union, never mind current events in the news. Look, if you look at the fall of the Soviet Union, if you're young enough or you're just not thinking hard enough, you think what happened is one day there was the Soviet Union, then the Berlin Wall came down, and it was over, democracy in Russia. Did that happen that way, actually?
Actually, no.
No. No. It's still playing out, in fact. Martin Luther King gives the I Give a Dream speech in 1963. Epochal moment in human history. In 1968, 5 years later, there's race riots still. Actually, the first big race riots, I think. But in any case, I think within the men's rights community, we have, I say this with love, I think we have our egoers who think none of this will ever change. And that's maybe where some of the more hardcore, what I would call the hardcore MGTOWs, men going their own way, come from. None of this can change. It's all biological determinism. It really can't change. People won't change. Men won't change. Women won't change. To which I say no, and I don't have to choose either social constructivism or rabid genetic reductionism.
Well, the part of that really bothers me sometimes is that, one, if this were solely biological determinism and everybody was cast into a role that they could not break out of, we couldn't have men going their own way. That phenomena could not exist. Now, is it different? Yes. The fact of the matter is that this is the first movement that really does challenge gender roles. This is the first movement that really does go against a lot of human drives, and it makes it tougher for that reason. There's no doubt it's harder. So I've looked at it from an understanding of counterculture, and I think that is a critical part of understanding what's happening here. There is not going to be a Men's Rights Day parade in Washington, D.C. with 200,000 people on the green and a Men's Rights Act passed in Congress, and all these things that we normally consider iconic of civil rights movements. What there can be, though, is a counterculture, and there already is one. MGTOW is a counterculture. The MRAs are a counterculture, both men and women. They are people that have taken the red pill, changed their perspective, whatever you want to call it, but they are forming a sub-community that is growing. just like we saw with the Romantics, like we saw with the Bohemians, like we saw with the Beatniks, like we saw with the hippies. You can call hippies whatever you want. You can't say they didn't change the culture.
The hip hop movement,
Yes,
like it or hate it. It
all
doesn't.
of these things have a tremendous impact on the culture at large. That's how you change a culture, is with countercultures. It's the only way that cultures change, and that's what's happening right now. So does it matter if Cassie Jaye is a evil sneak that set out to undermine the men's movement and make this movie to make us all look bad? No, if she did that, it might even help us more than hurt us. I don't think that's going to happen. I think what you got from her today was what's going to happen in the movie. I could be wrong. Who knows? Nobody knows for sure. But in the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is that more and more people start looking at this stuff and challenging their own ideas, and that's already happening. But we're not going to get there by worrying every time a journalist writes something that's nasty. Just spell the URL correctly. Spell my name right. Get it out there. Get more people to the site. Get more people to the MGTOW forums. Give more people a way to look. And those comments out there on the internet actually change things for the better. And the comments now look tremendously different than they did even 2 years ago. Any article out there that comes out that's pro-feminist, none of it's going unchallenged anymore. They have to delete it in order to keep their forum clean. But I wanted to talk about this because I just wanted to reiterate the idea and maybe try to infuse more of this in discussion, that we are not here to make friends with the mainstream. We're not here to one day wake up and have every legislator in every state suddenly talking about our issues. Eventually that will happen. It will become a part of the culture. But the way we get there is the way we've been going, which is to talk about this stuff unapologetically and to have other people like Cafe, do great work. And they don't take the same track we do. But I remember as a kid watching the Olympics and seeing a runner, I forget his name, but he got a gold medal. And instead of putting his hand over his heart when they played the national anthem, he raised a black fist.
Right.
Black power. And that was needed at the time. That was a part of that counterculture, that movement that eventually brought real change to society. And I raised mine too.
I'll tell you, I can't emphasize this point enough. I've met a number of people within the men's movement and some outside of it who say, well, I've met people like, okay, I'll just say it, mostly MGTOWs, also some PUAs, who think that what men's rights activists do is we go out and we primarily lobby government officials and try and get new laws passed, sign petitions. Well, we do a little of those things, but the fact of the matter is what we mostly do is engage in counterculture, exactly like you just mentioned, Paul, because I'll tell you, all right, I just mentioned, for example, the civil rights movement in the 1960s. I don't think this point can be missed. After the Civil War and the end of slavery, black people were denied all sorts of basic fundamental rights for about 100 years, almost to the day. In 1964, President Lyndon Johnson staked his entire presidency on getting something called the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed, which, you know, whatever, there may be some little things to criticize within it, overall was the legislation that said, bang, no more. There will be no more discrimination in the United States. It was followed within 1 year with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which guaranteed the vote to everybody no matter what, if they were of age. It didn't matter. No more literacy tests, no more of that bullshit, counting the number of jelly beans in a jar. No, everybody gets a vote. So, civil rights are now established in America? Not really. 3 years later, we saw riots. 3 years later, we saw, well, I believe it was the '68 Olympics, but I can't remember what year that was, where that guy was raising his fist in Black Power and whatever. And we saw all sorts of civil unrest through the early 1970s around race issues. And we still haven't fully resolved race issues, although I think you'd be a fool not to think that they're orders of magnitude better today than they were 50 years ago. Similarly here, we can see all the legal changes we want. For example, we've seen this new movie Divorce Corp that Joe, I can't remember what his name is. Anyway, the movie Divorce Corp, the director of Divorce Corp, is trying to get a movement together to change laws on child custody and divorce in the United States. Those may pass. This will not necessarily mean everything gets better overnight, because A, there'll be a lot of remaining issues, and B, the courts have historically found ways to get back to doing things business as usual regardless of what the legislation says. So I believe in my heart, anybody who isn't in this and thinking, oh, that short term means 10 years and that long term may mean 100 is not thinking straight. And if you don't have that level of patience, you need to get it. And this is one of the reasons why I, for example, have always considered the MGTOW, even the ones who say, I'm not a men's rights activist, they're full of shit, they're wasting their time. It's why I've always believed every MGTOW, whether he wants to admit it or not, is a form of men's rights activist. Because just the act of saying, I'm not playing this game anymore, is an act of disobedience to the wider culture. And becomes something that we as men's rights activists can point to, and you say, you see those guys? Now you can keep calling them losers and whiners and whatever you want, but guess what? There's more and more of them all the time. Do you think you might want to stop and question your own assumptions as to why those guys see things this way?
Dean, that's why no matter how much flack that we get from some of the more extreme MGTOWs out there, the isolationists that point at MRIs and say we're a bunch of manginas or whatever we get, we're always going to support the MGTOW community and the idea of men going their own way. We're absolutely going to be behind that with every resource we can and every way we can, publishing literature on that, because the best solution that this culture has is showing men one at a time that they don't have to buy this bullshit corporate lie, marriage lie, everything else that's going on out here that really just sort of grabs men when they're born and raises them to be useful and disposable, that they don't have to participate in that. And the worse that feminist governance makes things for men, the more that philosophy is attractive to them. We're not really building the MGTOW movement. Feminism is, and certain aspects of traditionalism is building the MGTOW movement. Certainly running around, I know Dean and I disagree on this, or we might, but running around using guys on battlefields to go kill and die for corporate interests is not a really great alternative for men. Doesn't work out so good in the long run. I've been in the VA hospital enough and seen enough of the results to know how good that is for men in the end. But they've never felt like there's been an option. Men have felt like that, well, there's the military traditional route, whatever, there is go the feminist route. But there really wasn't many options, and now there finally is one. There's an alternative for men to say, you know something, I don't have to do any of this stuff. I can make my own way. I don't have to try to climb the corporate ladder and become a success in the eyes of other men. I don't have to run around dedicating my life to pleasing women. I can do what I want to do, and they're actually starting to take up on it despite the biological determinism that's preached by some of them.
That's right. Men are opting out of marriage and commitment all over the world, not just in the United States, Canada, and etc. They're opting out all over the world, and a lot of them don't know why they are, but the more we spread a message, the more of them will start to think, yes, this is why. I'd never thought about it before, but yeah. And more men, I believe, will start asking the hard question of, oh, you want a relationship and to make a baby with me? Well, I might like to make a baby, but why would I do that? And what is in it for me? And that's just such a shocking question to normal ears in this culture. But that can change. There's a lot of things that can change. But I don't believe any effective political change will happen without cultural change first. And this is why what you're saying about counterculture is absolutely correct. And why it's not going to change overnight. In fact, I have a theory, a rather radical theory, so somebody can check me on this. Google up something sometime called preference falsification, which is a psychosocial theory as to why there are sudden There are sometimes very sudden social changes when people didn't think they were going to change at all. I'm actually pretty much of the opinion that we might be about, in shorter time than people believe, feminism might get a stink on it faster than people think it does.
I think it's already
even
happening.
I think it may even fall as an ideology, and here's where I get in trouble with some of my friends in the movement. If feminism falls as an ideology and nobody takes it seriously anymore, we actually have a bigger problem to face waiting on the other end anyway, which is all the things that Warren talks about, all the things that Tom Golden talks about, most of the things that you just talked about. Fine, the vilification of men ends. Does the end of using men as disposable utilities come with that? Does the end of men seeking their identity through the approval of women end from that? Does the social expectation, oh, well, feminism's dead, therefore it's your job to be the provider. And by the way, never hit a woman. I was taught that from a very early age in an anti-feminist household. Feminism is not the only problem. Feminism is gynocentrism on steroids. So even if we suddenly see the women's studies department start shutting down one after the other, and more women, which by the way we're seeing all the time, more and more women show up and say, I'm not a feminist, this is bullshit, I don't want anything to do with this. The more, I mean, feminism could evaporate and become a minor ideology that nobody takes serious anymore, or that they actually loathe, like the white supremacist movement, and still the underlying problems will be there, which is why, once again, the movement has to be about creating a counterculture and getting men to stop thinking of themselves in terms first and foremost of what women or society expect of them, but start seeing themselves first and foremost as human beings, then as male human beings second, and pondering what that means. But you are not a disposable utility. Even if you do choose to do something heroic, I don't even know if I want to put that in scare quotes, something heroic, like be a fireman, or go ahead and join the military because you don't quite share Paul's view that all of our wars are for corporations. You've chosen that because you chose it, because you made the thought process that, no, this is what I want to do. I believe in that conflict over there, or I believe I want to fight fires, or I believe I want to be a cop and I want to save people, or whatever it is. But you didn't do it because, well, this is what's going to make me a man. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to remember that as we see more and more women now, we're seeing more and more women all the time say, I'm not a feminist, I hate feminists. Fill in the rest of that sentence, guys. It's, I'm not a feminist, I want a man to take care of me.
Quite
That's
frequently.
what you're hearing from most of these women. Not, what do they say, NAWALT? Well, I was talking to somebody the other day and I heard a new one. EWALT. Enough women are like that.
I like that one myself.
So do I. And I think it's really important to remember that. We're not just fighting feminism here. We're not just trying to overturn discrimination in family courts. Dean is absolutely right. When feminism falls, and it will, because it's a sick, corrupt ideology that can't stand the pressure of any weight on it. It's a house of cards that will eventually buckle, and we think we're seeing that to start happen now. But when it does, I can promise you a resurgence of male utility-oriented traditionalism is going to rush in and claim victory. All I'm saying is don't let it claim you at the same time, because if you do, if that's your agenda, then we're right back at square one to gynocentrism. And personally, I don't want to be there. Dean, you got anything else before we close?
Well, you did just mention gynocentrism. I'm going to mention Peter Wright's awesome site, gynocentrism.com, which goes into the historical roots of a lot of this stuff, a lot of the stuff feminism secretly is based on, that they don't even recognize, and why you don't have to believe all this shit is just embedded in our genes and unchangeable. Gynocentrism.com is awesome. Also, go to migto.avoiceformen.com, where Peter Wright is doing some stellar work, bringing forward men going their own way material. Know that we have your full, we have you guys all MGTOW have our full support in what they're doing to define themselves in their own lives. And competing sites. We welcome competing sites. We need as many voices as possible, including voices who don't like us. More power to it. And I'll end with that. I do worry a little that Cassie's actually going to get more pushback against feminists than, I mean, she's got people telling her she shouldn't make this movie. It should be interesting. We've seen people like Aaron Pitsey actually have their writing careers destroyed because they were saying things that the feminist establishment didn't like. I'm hoping that doesn't happen to Cassie. But I'll tell you right now, honest to God, if I walk out of that movie and feel like we just got savaged, that she just made us look like Nazis, Stalinists, I won't care, because I know it will make people curious, and thinking people will show up, and they'll continue to show up. And you know why? We may not be perfect, we may not be right about everything, but I believe we are on the right side of history. We are on the right side of civil rights. We are on the right side of human rights. And on the whole, we are anyway. And nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. That's what I think.
People attacking us has been pretty good to us so far. I would
right.
say that's how we've gotten most of our growth. I want to mention a couple other things. Oh, and I do. That can't be your final word because I want to get your opinion on something. One, before I get to that, I want to apologize to everybody. We had enormous technical problems. We ended up having to not do this on my YouTube channel. What we're going to do as quickly as we can is we're going to download this. We're going to chop it in half and let the Cassie Jaye interview stand on its own because this discussion was really not about that so much. It was about other things. But it should be up soon. Sorry about the problems. The other thing, Dean, the organization RAIN, R-A-I-N-N, Rape and Incest, something other. They're the largest anti-sexual abuse organization in the United States, probably in the world, has issued a report to the White House saying that rape culture is essentially bullshit and calling on the White House to change its guidelines for how universities treat rape, to take the focus off these internal tribunals that young men are being tried at, and to involve the criminal justice system in allegations of rape, God forbid, and of all things, to start teaching potential rape victims how to take precautions so that they don't get themselves raped. So, I mean, this is, I think, the biggest blow to, because the heart and soul of feminism right now is rape culture. They just thrive on it. Everything is rape culture to them. I said rape, so I'm a part of rape culture. But this is really big news, isn't it? That this humongous organization with connections in the White House is all of a sudden just issued this big report, and all of it seems focused on the idea of debunking the rape culture myth.
Well, let's. All right. RAIN is still pretty clearly a gynocentric, feminist-influenced organization. They aren't quite where they ought to be yet. Nevertheless, I would say that I would compare it potentially. I mean, nothing's going to change this current administration on this.
Right.
No question. Nothing's going to change this current administration. But this is like the Berlin Wall coming down. I mean, you should have seen the Twitter storm amongst feminists like Jessica Valenti and others when RAIN did this. She even had one idiot tweet saying, "I don't understand why RAIN is being dismissive of the feminist perspective." I had to stop myself from responding, because your perspective is hateful, bigoted bullshit with no scientific basis, because that's the truth. I figured leave poor Jessica alone. Her life is going to get more miserable as time goes on, as her ideology gets challenged anyway. And even when I say compare it to the Berlin Wall coming down, you ever talk to anybody who was in Berlin or East Germany after the Berlin Wall came down? It took them a good solid 10 years to for things to get sorted out. Nothing happens overnight, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal. The rape culture notion, I'll tell you, people don't like me saying this, but the real rape culture that we live under is the one that laughs at the rape of men and can't even conceive of a woman using her vagina to abuse a man in any way sexually. And that's the real rape culture.
And the rape culture that's in our prisons.
And in our prisons and in our juvenile society. But I'll never make rape culture my byline for anything. I want all human beings to be helped when they need it. And if that's what winds up being 2/3 women and 1/3 men, fine. If it winds up being half men, half women, fine. I don't care. We need to stop with the ideology bullshit. And Rain just made a big step, not a complete step, but a big step toward that. And that's the sort of thing I expect to keep seeing happening over the next 20 years. And I really expect to see 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Nothing like this happens overnight, guys. And if you think it is, no, don't get disgusted. Do your best to make life as best as it can be for you right now. And hopefully, if you have the energy, help a little bit to make the future a better place. That's all I got. I'm really looking forward to Cassie's movie. Good, bad, or either, or somewhere in between. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, me too. Just want to say one more thing about the Rain report. Not that I would put evil ideas in anybody's mind, far be it from me to do something like that.
Yep.
But I do want to say that as somebody that has, dealt with seeing most times that I've seen AVFM mentioned in the press in one way or another, there's always been some feminist idiot running in behind saying SPLC, SPLC, and of course saying that we're a hate group, which the SPLC never did, but they don't let that stop them. As a matter of fact, we have the sort of weird distinction of being the only group that the SPLC has declared not to be a hate group in public. So that's pretty cool. But I know for me that over the next couple of years especially, that every time I see the word rape culture, RAINN, and that's for me, folks. We'll have both these videos up on my channel before long. Thanks everybody for your patience, and let's keep building the foundation.
All right, guys. Carry on. Take the red pill.
You have to click us out, Dean.
Oh, I do, don't I? Bye.